What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's some wild stuff going on, and I think I need to get more people knowing about it, from Helldivers 2 effectively losing the majority of its player base in record time. Cyberpunk 2077's sequel promises to push social commentary, and a new based game called the First Descendant has entered the gaming arena that I really want to talk about too, and how the First Descendant might become a sleeper hit that, according to rumors, rejects ESG and DEI and woke identity politics. Firstly, let's start with Helldivers 2. I previously reported that Helldivers 2's moderators were mass banning anyone who didn't agree with them politically on their Discord server, which has resulted in the official Discord for Helldivers 2 effectively becoming an echo chamber that promotes only left-leaning liberal politics, while denouncing and banning anyone who speaks out against this. None of that was okay, and it's still ongoing by the way. This spits in the face of a few months back when Helldivers 2's devs confirmed that they would never add real-world imagery to the game because of the political implications of what that would entail. And at this point, I think it's only a matter of time before Helldivers debuts real-world symbology within the game. Basically, everything Helldivers 2 has been pushing towards their players, like allowing everyone to have their own opinions and coexist, has turned out to be nothing but a lie. And now it seems they are paying the price even further. This comes from Forbes, which says, after initial success, Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its players with no signs of recovery. There's a lot of damning evidence in this article that we need to go over. Firstly, yes, it's true. Helldivers 2 has lost around 90% of its player base on Steam. As of the making of this video, here's a live look at the player base numbers, which you can now see on screen now. Sitting at around 28,000 players with a peak months ago of almost 500,000 when the game first released. Now I can already hear the keyboards tapping, but this is what always happens, right? Games come out, they blow up, they become the next big thing, months pass by, interest wanes, and then the hardcore remain while the casuals leave and go elsewhere. While this is true to an extent, we need to realize this is far more serious than that. If Helldivers was a single-player game losing 90% of its players months after release, this would be no big deal. Because obviously single-player games come out, people play it, they beat it, they get all the trophies and achievements and whatnot, have their fun, and then they just move on. There's nothing really worrying when a single-player game loses players because, again, it's not a live game. However, in Helldivers, because it's obviously a live service game, not only that, it is technically also Sony PlayStation's proof of concept that live service can be a viable future going forward for the corporation as a whole. And while this could have been true months ago, now it doesn't seem to be the case. I do want to also look at another article at the same time here. This one's from The Gamer, which is also about Helldivers losing players. The Gamer tries to run damage control for Helldivers by stating, it's also worth noting that these numbers are only representative of the player base on PC, Helldivers 2's secondary console, which means that they're probably much higher on PS5. We don't have proof of that, and they could be around the same, but the amount of community discussion that still happens daily suggests that there are still a lot of dedicated players. While it's true that we don't know PS5 numbers for Helldivers, this is still pretty bleak, and let me explain why. You see, if we go back, we can actually confirm that Helldivers' PC community was actually the reason why the game was such a mega hit in the first place. If we go back a month ago to when Helldivers was still a hot commodity, we had this financial analyst whose name is Matt Piscatella. This guy's job is obviously to oversee and comb through data and find patterns and report on what's doing well for companies and why. Here's what he said about Helldivers 2 back on May 1st. PC has been a huge part of the success of Helldivers 2 in the US. With PC, Helldivers 2 is already the 7th highest grossing Sony published game in history. Without PC, it wouldn't currently rank among the top 20. So from the mouth of a financial analyst, we now know that without PC, Helldivers 2 would be but a fraction of the success. And we need to stop dancing around the idea that PlayStation doesn't need PC when it comes to live service game support. So when The Gamer says Helldivers' PS5 community is likely still large, I highly doubt that. If the PC player base, which made up the majority, is at 10% of its peak right now, it's likely around the same for PlayStation as well. So is Helldivers cooked? To a degree, yes. Not well done steak, mind you, but it's medium well right now. It's still somewhat edible, but the longer this goes on, the more cooked this game's future is going to become, fellas. There's more stats we need to keep looking into, as Forbes reports according to their research that Helldivers 2 is currently the 58th top-selling game right now on Steam, where for the past few months it routinely was in the top 10. Although this next metric is really worrying, which is viewers on stuff like Twitch. The most watched stream on Twitch as of the making of this video for Helldivers 2 right now, it's sitting at 56 concurrent viewers. For a live service game, this is abysmal and obviously not good at all. If barely 100 people are watching the top stream on your game, it's probably time to reevaluate what exactly is going on and how you can go about fixing it. Also, Forbes details that Helldivers devs have been routinely issuing patches to the game that have been slowly but surely ruining the game's weapons and loadouts, making certain guns less usable and downright destroying viable builds that players were enjoying. Which is a bizarre thing to do because while yes, it is a live service game, Helldivers doesn't have PvP. I mean, sure, you can mistakenly shoot your buddy in the head, but like proper PvP matchmaking is just not a thing for this game. So the concept of nerfing builds into the ground for being viable, it makes zero sense. You should be empowering your players more instead to incentivize them to keep playing. Especially when it takes so long already just to unlock any of these weapons through the mini battle passes that they come with. Imagine spending hours trying to unlock a certain gun only for a balance patch to come out and make it useless. And now you're screwed out of tokens and the now suddenly viable weapons are out of reach. That would make anyone just want to close the game down and go play something else, and I really don't blame them for that one bit. Apparently, the higher difficulty levels are also far too hard for the majority of players, and according to Forbes, the devs at Arrowhead haven't really addressed this yet either. So endgame PvE content is not being played as much due to how imbalanced it is, which again, this is a live service game. You should probably fix these things if you want to keep your hardcore players, Arrowhead, but even after releasing some balance patches to rectify changes, this hasn't been enough to bring people back clearly as evidenced by the Steam charts. Forbes also claims that Helldivers 2's absence of announcing any major content updates has been a big problem as well, since games like this need to inject new content like enemy races, weapons, and such regularly to keep people engaged. It's been 5 months since Helldivers 2 is released, and Arrowhead has stayed silent on a new alien faction joining the game or not, or the future of the game in general. Like, we know new aliens are coming, they're the Illuminate, and their in-game models have leaked all over YouTube already. I'm sure you can find videos on it if you wanted to. But they're still not out yet, and while I'm sure the arrival of such enemies could bring back a portion of the player base, the truth is that these additions are taking far too long, and people are obviously just leaving in droves. And it seems like despite its initial success, Helldivers 2 is sinking right now. It doesn't help that Sony also released Destiny 2 The Final Shape recently, which also, very likely, carved into the Helldivers player base and stole players from there too. If anything, this all just proves how hard it is to sustain a live service game. Like I've said in previous vids about this, Helldivers is where it is because of the moronic design decisions of Sony and Arrowhead, and the fact they allowed their woke community managers to ruin their game's player base as well. It's very clear that Helldivers 2 could return to prominence, but at this point you need to ask the question of whether people even want it to. With community managers that go out of their way to ban people who push against their politics, it's clear this is yet another game that has been drowned by the Western mind virus way of thinking. It's really a shame. It could have been an amazing long-standing game, but now I fear Helldivers 2 will be nothing more than a cautionary tale of how woke community managers and moronic design practices can cause mass exoduses of players. Will Sony and Arrowhead learn, or will they double down? I guess time will tell. However, if you're the sort of player who enjoys these live service games where you can play with friends, shoot big monsters, and get loot and all of that, I should state that the First Descendant is pretty much almost out as of the making of this video. It comes out July 2nd, and based on previews, the game looks bombastic and crazy, like a fusion of Destiny meets Anthem and Diablo. You may also notice that the game features women that don't look like social justice warrior zealots. That's because the First Descendant is, unsurprisingly, made in South Korea, much like Stellar Blade. This is a game that seems to be rejecting the DEI agenda of the West and giving players what they want from an aesthetic point of view. Sexy women who aren't shapeless blobs that actually have feminine features. Even the guys don't look like pathetic dweebs but are instead athletic and fearsome. It looks like a game at first glance anyways, as if it was made in the early 2000s, and I mean that in a good way. Already we are having articles like this one from Insider Gaming criticizing the First Descendant for its scantily clad character models. Here's this article. The First Descendant has a more revealing outfit than Stellar Blade. The character in question that they're talking about is called Bunny, who according to their character trailer is a super fast electric shooting trickster that gets stronger the more she moves around, and if you look at her outfit, she is very much a product of South Korea. Here's what Insider Gaming said, and I quote, "The First Descendant is set to be released in just a couple of days, and with each passing hour, more information is being uncovered. Recently, eagle-eyed users identified a character model variant in the game that's even more risque than Stellar Blade's Eve. Ultimate Bunny. In the First Descendant, Ultimate Bunny has a lore-driven, incredibly skimpy outfit, leaving almost nothing to the imagination. In the First Descendant, players can assume control of a standard or an ultimate character. Over time, more ultimate characters will be added to the game, but there are a few available at launch to kick off the roster, including characters like La Peach and Viessa. The core difference is that ultimate characters are boosted, boasting a unique appearance and better stats than their standard counterparts. In the First Descendant, players can assume control of Bunny, who has a figure-hugging bodysuit and a bizarre helmet with, you guessed it, bunny ears. However, the ultimate version of Bunny is adorned in an outfit that may as well not be there, offering almost no real protection and showing off a fair portion of her body. Per the lore, it's because the suit was never finished or restored, and originally the plan was that it'd be a complete suit. Go figure, right?" End quote. Of course, this journalist here is trying to poke fun at the game while still offering typical Western Journo gobbledygook at the same time. Looking at Bunny's ultimate outfit, the character is very revealing. Yeah, I agree with that. But again, I think we need to have context here, which is that this is yet again a game that was made in South Korea with their values and traditions in place. If Bunny existed in a Western-made game, she'd be overweight, have a septum piercing, and looking vaguely like both genders. As per usual, just like Stellar Blade before it, the First Descendant is going to very likely get a lot of articles in the coming days or weeks that will be roasting the game over its sexualization of its playable characters. But I mean, people shouldn't be surprised. The game is made by Nexon, the same publisher that has made games like MapleStory, Dungeon & Fighter, as well as stuff like Kart Rider. This is a publishing studio that has been in the game for almost as long as I've been alive. Nexon was founded in 1994. I was born in 92, so this company has been going for a while now. God, I feel old telling people when I was born. My bones ache just thinking about it. Anyways, IGN is currently doing a review in progress for the First Descendant right now. According to what they've played, and oh by the way, the game is free to play, which I mean isn't surprising considering it is made by Nexon. But anyways, IGN states that the game's actual gameplay, as in shooting and whatnot, feels polished and top tier amongst its competition. However, IGN also said the dialogue and story is laughably bad, and the filler missions that you can do to grind for materials and such are pretty bland and uninteresting. They also say that the saving grace here is the battle against the big kaiju-like beings that are called Colossuses. Here's some of what IGN said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, so much of it is being kept locked behind sections where you complete a series of really dull errands, like defending a piece of tech from waves of enemy assaults, gathering items from fallen baddies to deposit into a collection robot, or just killing stuff until a mini-boss spawns for you to take out. Not even dope combat can stave off boredom when it has you hanging around for a few minutes while you wait for small groups of enemies to spawn, until you're told that you succeeded, then being directed to the next spot on the map to do it again. These sections account for a pretty big chunk of what you do during the main story too, seemingly to pad out the adventure so you don't burn through the more interesting activities too quickly. Worst of all, there are only a few flavors of these kinds of quests, so you'll find yourself being asked to repeat them multiple times in between every boss battle or more meaty story mission. While I've only played through half of the campaign, so far it's really not looking great, absolutely brimming with nonsensical sci-fi babble like dimensional walls, inverted data codes, and unleashing Arch. It's one of the sillier stories I've seen in a while. Most of the dialogue is absolutely atrocious. At one point I burst out laughing when a bad guy menacingly declared, "Quailof will engulf Ingress, the roars of the Vulgus will fill this land with fear." In another section, I shook my head as an antagonistic character named Jeremy, a grown man with the voice of a whiny, spoiled teenage brat, showed up to be the most annoying person in the world and was mean to me for no reason while I ran quests for him. It's truly heinous stuff, but some of it is so bad it's pretty amusing. I eventually found myself looking forward to these cutscenes, eager for the next hit of sci-fi gibberish and butchered voice performances. On top of the absurdity, the English voices rarely come close to matching the lips of the characters speaking. That's fine if you enjoy watching anime dubs, but I find it pretty distracting. Similarly, the weapons, equipment, and upgrades you earn while shotgunning your way through the levels are awesome. Loot drops constantly, most weapons feel distinct and satisfying to play with, and watching the numbers go up as you modify and upgrade every new toy in your arsenal makes the First Descendant hard to put down until it forces you into about 15 separate menus to juggle dozens of materials and so many different systems that you might want to keep your inhaler at the ready, end quote. So it seems, at least from this preview by IGN, that the game nails its actual gameplay and offers a lot of progression for players to chase, which I mean is what you want from these live service games. But the story, characters, and whatnot is not great at all. But considering the last thing looter shooter players play for is story, it's not very surprising that not much care was put into this. Since as someone who's played Destiny since day one, I have friends who have triple the amount of playtime I do in that game, and they couldn't tell you even a fraction of the game's lore. But if you ask them what the best guns, mods, and abilities are, they suddenly turn into mathematician wizards that know all of the ins and outs of these sorts of games. So I wager that the First Descendant will be very similar in this regard. But it's great that another game is coming that bucks the trend by injecting actual attractive character models into a game again. Because I think the more this happens, the better the industry will become and hopefully returns to some level of normalcy. It's also probably a good move because most games that have done well this year, pretty much they all reject identity politics. Look at Elden Ring's DLC, Stellar Blade, and more for proof. And obviously Nexon probably isn't too worried considering the First Descendant is currently on Steam's top 10 most wishlisted games right now, having over twice as many wishlists compared to Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, and like I said, Descendant is free to play. And it also releases on PS5 and PC in like a day as of the making of this video anyways. If you're watching this post July 2nd, surprise, it's already out right now and you can try it for free, I guess. I think we need more games that just show sexy is back, because maybe over time it'll turn the Western devs back from being such prudes when it comes to character designs. Whether you want to play Descendant or not, the truth is that it does look very nice to watch at least. And unlike Helldivers, which has been hijacked by woke community moderators, Descendant will obviously be led by a team that is hopefully South Korean only. And by that I mean I hope the community managers who interact with fans, especially Western ones, are not drinking the Kool-Aid so many other community moderators seem to be drinking these days. Because despite being a good game, a product lives and dies by its player base, and this is why it always confuses me as to why companies hire these activist brain-rotted weirdos to be the medium between them and the player base. It's like giving a monkey a loaded handgun and expecting it to be responsible and not pull the trigger. You're playing with fire when you give a crazy person the absolute power to do whatever they want. And let's be real, devs and producers are far too busy, especially during the launch of these sorts of games, to be reading fan feedback. So they rely on these community managers and moderators to give them the necessary information that they need. And I'm inclined to believe that these community managers are a big reason why these games can become ghost towns so quickly. Helldivers is a cautionary tale, and I hope the First Descendant doesn't follow in its path. But it's unlikely considering Descendant is Korean, but let's hope their community manager doesn't end up being some American-born Korean person who lives in California and starts pushing their politics onto everybody else, but I guess we'll see. It's out soon, so I'm sure we'll hear more about it in the coming days and weeks. And speaking of California, I just wanted to go over this last story, which isn't really related to the previous two, but I found it kind of messed up and weird, so I wanted more people to see it. So CD Projekt Red, who made Cyberpunk, recently had a big discussion talking about how it was making Cyberpunk and all of that. A post-mortem discussion, if you will, is probably the best way to describe it. Anyways, the devs came to the conclusion that after making Cyberpunk a dystopian hellscape, some of the devs eventually visited America, specifically California. And they stated that once they walked through the streets of Los Angeles and San Francisco, that they realized that Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't dystopian enough. and that real life was actually even worse than they imagined for their game's world of Night City. That said, the homelessness crisis they witnessed while in America, remember CD Projekt Red is based in Poland all the way in Europe, so totally different culture and all of that. And CD's developers stated if and when they make a future Cyberpunk game, they will have to double down on the dystopian angle. Because parts of America are so bad when it comes to homelessness and crime that Cyberpunk felt less realistic and true in comparison. I know not a story related to the other ones, but I found it interesting regardless, and I just really wanted to share it. You know things are messed up when devs who worked for years on a game about a society controlled by mecha corporations where crime is everywhere feels like their game is not bleak enough after visiting the liberal hellhole that is California. That's insane, dude. So I guess you can fully expect entire neighborhoods in Cyberpunk's next game just being homeless camps and even more awful dystopian stuff because they clearly apparently didn't go far enough. So glad I don't live in California, man. It's truly a place of ultra wealth versus ultra poor. And just imagine foreigners visiting your home and going, damn, and we thought our game was bleak. Yikes, dude. But anyways, I think that's enough for now. Helldivers 2 has lost basically everybody at this point and went from one of the biggest success stories of 2024 to a ghost town in less than half a year. The First Descendant could be the next mega hit if things go well, but will its characters and bland story stand in the way of truly connecting with players? And what do you think of CD Projekt Red calling California a hellhole? Is it accurate? Let me know. As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, share the video, and like it if you enjoyed it. Thank you. Also, thanks to my patrons as always too. Have a great day, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.